Vibhaji is the master of ceremonies. She will now initiate everything. Over to Vibhaji.
So we welcome Dr. Hegdeji, Puja Swamiji, Nagarajuji and all the participants here. I will just request Puja Swamiji to speak few words of in a sort of introduction. Everyone knows Dr. Hegdeji and welcome him. Yes, Puja Swamiji can start.
Hari Om. Namaste. It's my privilege to speak a few words before Dr. Hegde begins his presentation. And I am doing that this late evening here in India from this beautiful ashram in Bangalore called Suvarnamukhi Samskriti Dhama. Sitting next to me is Acharya Dr. Nagaraju, who returned from Michigan and has set up this beautiful ashram. Dr. Hegde and a whole lot of his Vedanta students have visited, spent time several times in the Suvarnamukhi ashram. So have our friends from Powai Forum. Now, I don't have to formally introduce Dr. Hegde, as the invitation that came to you has given some details about him. But what is not said here is the kind of wonderful bond that all of us have with him, with his warm and unassuming, simple personality, but with a lot of hard work he puts into every class that he gives, the kind of homework he does to make everything not only pleasant but easy of comprehension to his listeners is remarkable. There are a lot of things apart from Vedanta that we need to learn from him, and he is a good friend of all of us. So on behalf of everybody, I heartily welcome Dr. Timappa Hegde and request him to talk to us about Swami Vidyaranya, of whom most of us know quite just a little only. We would like to know more, and we look forward to this program. Om Namo Narayana. Om.
Hari Om Swamiji. Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity to take part in this webinar of Powai Forum. Sarva Vedanta Siddhanta Gocharam Tama Gocharam Govindam Paramanandam Sadgurum Pranatosmyam. I have chosen to speak on the life and works of Swami Vidyaranya and to see what inspiration we can draw from his work. This is a famous quote from Longfellow, which says that lives of great men all remind us that we can make our lives sublime. The second part is not true much in Vedantic parlance. And departing leave footprints on the sands of time. For a true Vedantin, the world is not so real and they do not wish to make much investment in the world. In the example of Vidyaranya, who is also a kingmaker, he was responsible for the creation of the Vijayanagar Empire. The founder kings wanted to name it after him. It was initially named as Vidyanagar, but he later changed it to Vijayanagar. Again, a true Vedantin does not believe in investing too much. And yet we have great inspiration from Swami Vidyaranya, who is an example of an inner winner. He is a Jivan Mukta himself. And at the same time, who has contributed so much for the propagation of Veda Purva as well as Vedanta, particularly in the entire southern India. This is a quote from Patanjali, which goes like this: when you are inspired, dormant faculties, talents, and forces become awakened, and you become far greater than what you ever dreamt yourself to be. So the objective is, when we read about the works of great people, to see how we can be inspired. Gautama Buddha had said, if even one person can achieve, it is everybody's potential to achieve. How is that some people who are just like us in body and mind can be far greater in accomplishments? And that is what we will see. The biography of Sri Vidyaranya, it is very difficult to say what is fact, what is fiction, and different sources give different stories altogether. And what I have got is from the website of Sringeri. The story goes that there were two young boys from Warangal, extremely bright, and the father takes them to a guru called Shankarananda. Shankarananda is supposed to be a difficult person as a teacher because he would not accept anybody or anyone. But seeing these two bright boys, he accepted them to be his students. So the initial teachers of Vidyaranya Swami, his pre-monastic name being Madhava. The story goes later that the younger of the two brothers left home, went wandering south in search of true knowledge, and reached Sringeri. And there the great Vidya Shankar Tirtha was the reigning Jagat Guru. And seeing this bright boy, he initiated him to sannyas, and not only into sannyas, he gave him the name Bharati Krishna Tirtha and made him his a junior pontiff. The older brother, Madhava, went in search of his younger brother, and he also happened to reach Sringeri, and he found his younger brother now to be the junior pontiff. The younger brother, now Bharati Tirtha, requests Vidya Tirtha to initiate him into sannyas, and Vidya Tirtha gives him the name of Sri Vidya Aranya. By that time, both these brothers were actually very much accomplished and had a lot of contributions as far as the Veda Bhashyams were already done by these two brothers. It is said that later on, Sri Vidyaranya went on a pilgrimage to Kashi. And the story goes that the immortal saint Vyasacharya manifested to him, and he had a chance to go through his Veda Bhashyam and found nothing to correct, nothing else to add. On his return, he spent a long time at Hampi, and he immersed himself into intense meditation. While he was in Hampi, it is said that the rulers who were displaced by the invasion from North India, Bukkaraya and Harihara, meets him, and Vidyaranya empowers them to gain their kingdom, and that is how the Vijayanagara was established, which went on for the next 300 years. Once his younger brother, but the senior pontiff now died, Vidyaranya became the 12th Jagat Guru of the Sringeri Matha from 1980 to 1986. The two brothers together were in charge of Sringeri for over 50 years, leaving a great imprint on the great center of Vedantic learning at Sringeri. When Adi Shankara left home from Kaladi in search of a guru, he stopped at a place where he saw something very unusual. A serpent fully hooded was giving shade to a pregnant frog. And seeing the wonderful coexistence between animals, Adi Shankara realized that this place is a very sacred place. And he said, my first Matha will be here. And that is how Sringeri Matha was established a little later. Sringeri is famous for its Jagat Gurus, each one excelling the others. And among them, the star among them still will be Vidyaranya Swami. There is a story relating to goddess Lakshmi. So whenever you see this picture of Vidyaranya, you see a picture of a goddess behind. And the story goes that in his early days, Vidyaranya went through a lot of poverty, and he invoked goddess Lakshmi through all forms of upasanas. And in spite of every upasana, he was not able to get any benefit from goddess Lakshmi. And in fact, he heard a voice that I cannot help you in this life. At that time, he decided to take sannyas. And the moment he took sannyas, it is said that Goddess Lakshmi manifests to him and says, "What do you want?" He says, "Now that I have taken sannyas, I don't need anything." But she said, "I have manifested to you, you must take something." He says, "I want nothing." And then she's supposed to say, "If you want nothing, I will give you everything." She is supposed to have showered him with knowledge, and that is why he's known as Vidya Aranya, a forest of knowledge. And of course, a lot of wealth, which led to the establishment of the Vijayanagar Empire. For many years, he served as an advisor, as a prime minister for these two kings. And the fame and influence was to the entire southern states when Vidyaranya functioned as the Rajaguru for the Vijayanagar Empire. I will read his complete works. His works include the Bhashyams on all the Vedas, Rig Veda, Yajurveda, Sama Veda, and the Atharva Veda. Among his monumental works are the Panchadashi, which is considered like the Bible for Vedanta. He's written on all philosophical schools called the Sarva Darshana Sangraha. Anubhuti Prakasha is his commentary on all the Upanishads. Jivan Mukta Viveka, Aparokshanubhuti Tika, the Yoga Vashishta called Lagu Yoga Vashishta, Saundarya Lahari Tika, Lalita Sahasranama Bhashyam, and the Shankara Digvijaya. So much importance is given for his commentary because whenever there is a disparity between Adi Shankara's commentary on the Upanishads and Vidyaranya's commentary, teachers bring about both the commentaries. They tell us what Vidyaranya also said. I was listening to once Swami Tejomayananda explaining this verse, Shraddhaya Deham, Ashraddhaya Deham, which said gifts should be given with faith, never give without faith. And somebody comes to him and says, but Vidyaranya has said, even if you do not have faith, you must give. And so Swamiji went to verify and he said that was right. So Vidyaranya had said, even if you do not have faith, you must give. So that is the importance that is given to whatever comments has been given by Vidyaranya Swami. Swami Chinmayananda has written on the life story of Vidyaranya Swami. These are from Swami Chinmayananda's writings. It was probably that he wanted to write a commentary on Panchadashi, which could not be done. And these are from his unpublished works. It is said that in Varanasi, Sri Swami Vidyaranya had a darshan of the immortal saint Vyasa. Veda Vyasa read through and was surprised at the scholarliness of the author and finding nothing to add or to correct. What I would like to do in this presentation is give a little insight to some of his works, because that is what we have today. And if you're able to draw inspirations from his work, some of us would have studied some of these texts. And if you have not studied, it is an inspiration to study these particular texts. And those who have studied them, it will be a nice revision of the works Panchadashi and certain chapters of Panchadashi, and of course, Drik Drishya Viveka. Many people say it is the work of Adi Shankara or any Shankaracharya, but there are many people who compare a lot of similarity between Panchadashi and Drik Drishya Viveka. Another of his immortal works is the Shankara Digvijaya. I will briefly touch on this great work, the Drik Drishya Viveka, which is just 46 verses. It does not begin with any invocation to any guru. Whenever there is an invocation to a particular guru, it helps us to find out who is the guru and therefore who is the student. So therefore, there are some people who say this is a work of Adi Shankara. Others that say it is a combined work of Vidyaranya Swami and his younger brother, the Bharati Tirtha. In this work, there is a summary of the entire Vedanta which comes twice. There are two sections. The whole of the Drik Drishya Viveka is a distinction between the seer, whatever the field of my experience, which can also be taken as existence, and the seen, which can be taken as consciousness. What is this consciousness? A way to explain consciousness would be, if I can, the way to explain consciousness would be with this hand light example. Now, I'm showing you the palm of my hand, and the question is, in addition to my hand, what else do you see? Many people will say, I see lines, I see so many things, but there is one thing which the teacher would like you to draw your attention to, and the teacher will say, it is not part of the hand, it is not a property of the hand, it is not a product of the hand, it is an independent entity. Because of that, you're able to see the hand. And the answer is light. So what is apart from the hand, but which we also see, is light on the hand. So whenever I see any object, I'm able to see hand plus light. Now, to understand Vedanta, the whole exercise is, can I move from the object to the subject? That means from the hand, I move, I'm able to see the hand because of my eyes. My eyes are able to see because my mind is awake, and my mind is able to see because of consciousness. Consciousness and light have many similar factors. Like the diffuse light in this room, for instance, is not part of my hand. It is not a product of my hand. It is an independent entity because of which my hand is seen. If I remove my hand, the light continues to exist, but the light is not seen for want of a reflecting media. So too, teachers say consciousness is not a part, product, or a property of the body. It is an independent entity which makes this body conscious. Because of it, I'm able to speak. Because of consciousness, you are able to listen. This consciousness is not limited by the boundaries of the body. It is all pervading. In fact, it includes all of us. The consciousness survives even after the fall of the body. And just like the light example, the surviving consciousness cannot be accessed because of a want of a reflecting medium. In Swami Bhagwan Ramana Maharshi in the Upadesha Sara has brought out one verse which brings about the link between consciousness and existence. He says, whatever is within, that is consciousness, and whatever you see out as existence are not two things. Sattva basika chit kvave itara sattaya hi chit chittaya I aham. That means sat and chit together is me. When I become awake, because of the interface or the instrument of the mind, there is a seeming separation of existence outside and consciousness within. This is brought out in the Mandukya Upanishad, that in the waking state, what I experience as existence outside is called Virat, and the consciousness within can be named as Vishwa. And in the dream state, it is Taijasa and Hiranyagarbha. With this background, let us understand Drik Drishya Viveka. The experience world is the seen. The world is seen by my eyes, which is the first level of the seer. The eyes are seen by the mind, which becomes the second seer. And the third seer is the consciousness, which is the absolute seer. So we are moving from existence to consciousness with the interface of the sense organs and the mind, which is together becomes the ahankara. The opening words of Drik Drishya Viveka are like this: Rupam Drishyam Lochanam Drik. All the forms are seen, the eyes are the seer. Tad Drishyam Driktur Manasam. So the eye is now seen by the mind. Drishya di Vrittaya Sakshi. So whatever the mind is now able to see from the sense organs. So whatever images have now become thoughts in my mind, and the thoughts are seen by consciousness, and this consciousness can never be seen. So you have something which is an absolute seer, which can never be seen, and then you have the absolute seen, which can never be the seer, which are the two extremes. And in between, you have a combination of seen seer, which is the sense organs and the mind. So these 46 verses of Drik Drishya Viveka can be divided into two separate chapters. The first chapter is up to verse 1 to 31. And then from verse 32 to 46 is a complete another summary. There are teachers who said that this includes about 16 verses from an Upanishad called Saraswati Rahasya Upanishad. And therefore you have the quality of the Upanishad in these verses also. The Drikdrishya Viveka makes a distinction between the seer and the seen. We also have the cause of samsara, why we have samsara, and then the remedy for samsara. Once we have understood the remedy for samsara, Vidyaranya in this text gives a very unique system of meditation, whether you are seeing the world outside with your open eyes or whether you're seeing the world inside in the form of thoughts. Let me explain this once again. So the world that I see is seen by my sense organs, which is the eyes, which is seer number 1. The sense organs are seen by the mind, which is the seer number 2. And the mind is seen by consciousness, which is the ultimate seer, the Atma. So we can divide it into existence outside or Sat, consciousness within or Chit. What is the cause of samsara? The cause of samsara is all of us are a mixture of this body-mind complex and Atma. And the problem is Atma is always a samsari, while the Sakshi is always a samsari. Ahankara. The Ahankara is always a samsari, whereas the Sakshi or the Atma is always a samsari. So the more you have the Drikdrishya, that you are able to see the seen and the seer, then what we will do, we will make a correct identification between. So this misidentification with my body-mind complex is the problem, is the cause of all samsara. So whenever I use the word I, it refers to the mixture, because we can never separate body, mind, and consciousness. So there is a certain ignorance because of ignorance, and this is the product of Maya. I tend to identify with my limited body-mind complex, and this limited body-mind complex is a karta, it is a bhokta, it is parichinna, it is limited, and therefore I experience samsara. Now, while I make a mistake within, I make a similar mistake outside. Vidyaranya says the world outside is a combination of existence and nama rupa. There is a beautiful verse, verse 20, worth remembering, which goes like this. Asti bhati priya rupam namache iti amsha panchakam adhyatraya brahma rupe jagat rupe tatodvayam. Any product that you see in the world has 3 components or 5 components. Adhyatraya, the first 3 components are Sat, Chit and Ananda. The word he uses is Asti, it exists. Bhati, it manifests. Priyam means Ananda. The first 3 are Brahma Rupe. Nama and Rupa are Jagat Rupe Tatodvayam. And the mistake we make on the world outside, we focus on the Nama Rupa and we miss the existence. So the whole teaching of Drikdrishya Viveka is we make 2 mistakes. Whenever we see the objective world, we focus on the Nama Rupa. In the 7th chapter, the 7th verse goes like this. Mattaha Parat of the Bhagavad Gita. Mattaha parataram nanyat kinchidasti dhananjaya mai sarvam idam protam sutre manigana eva. Krishna says, I pervade in an invisible manner in and through everything in the objective world. And this is in the form of Asti Bhati Priya. And therefore, when you have this vision, everything that you see in the outer world is Isha Vasyam Idam Sarvam. And that is what the Drikdrishya wants you to see. To be able to see Bhagavan in the form of existence in the world outside. To be able to see the divine as consciousness within. As said in the Keno Upanishad, Prati Bodha Viditam Matam. Now this is the whole vision of Drikdrishya Viveka. So if the cause of samsara is my ignorance and wrong identification. The solution is knowledge and right identification. The knowledge is that Whenever I use the word I, remember I have ahankara for vyavahara, for transactional purposes, but the real me is sakshi. And this understanding becomes drik drishya viveka. I will use the another verse 15. Anta drik drishyo beda bahi cha brahma sargayo. So there is a drik drishya which we need to do within and without. Avrinato apara shakti, because of the maya shakti, although it is existence, it is covered, and this is the cause of samsara. Sa samsarasya karanam. Now, once I understand drik drishya viveka, will I get moksha? The teacher says, I will understand that I am never a samsari. The struggle for moksha will end. All I need to do is claim that I am the Sakshi. This is the aim of Vedanta. How do I do it? Objectively, that is in the world outside, I should shift from Nama Rupa to pure existence and train myself to see Isha Vasyam Idam Sarvam. So too, every object in the world comes to my mind in the form of a thought. And that thought is illumined by consciousness. Pratibodha viditam matam. In every experience, can I come in touch with the experiencer? That is why it is said, seeing the seer is the quintessence of meditation. In every experience, if I'm seeing an object in front of me, if I am aware that I am seeing, and that is what meditation is all about. Once this is understood, then what do? The body is a costume, the life is a drama, the world becomes a stage. Vidyaranya in Drik Drishya Viveka has given a form of a Nidithyasam or Vedantic meditation, which is may seem a little difficult on the surface, but if you can pay a little attention on this understanding, I would say this is one of the most beautiful classifications of meditation after the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. Meditation can be done as an open eye meditation on existence, or it can be a closed eye meditation within on consciousness. The open eye meditation is called Bahya Samadhi, and the closed eye meditation is called the Antara Samadhi. Either open eye or closed eye, when I focus on an image, this is called Drishyanuvidya. When I see any object, I see it as an object. When I see the same object in my mind, it becomes a vision. I can focus on the vision. And when I focus on the vision and I move from the object to the consciousness which is illumining it, that is a form of an inner meditation. For each of these objects, for instance, the consciousness which is illumining all my thoughts, there are Vedantic words like I am Aham Nityaha Shuddhaha Buddhaha Muktaha, and that is called Shabdanuvidya Savikalpa Samadhi. So too, existence has got Vedantic words. So whether you're doing Bahya or Antara, whether it is Drishyanuvidya or Shabdanuvidya, these are the various forms of meditation. And once the meditation becomes more intense, the distinction between the subject and the object gets lost, and then the person gets into Nirvikalpaka Samadhi. So these are the various forms of meditation. And this is the beautiful conclusion of the whole experience of meditation and the whole understanding of meditation when he says, Dehabhimana galite vijñate paramatmani yatra yatra manoyati tatra tatra samadhiyah. Which means you can be in meditation all the time if you are able to have body disidentification. Dehabhimane galite. Galite means to drop. When you drop this body identification and then you have this understanding, vijñate paramatmani. And when I understand that I am this higher self, then what happens? Yatra yatra manoyati. Wherever your mind goes, whether you're going outside or whether you're going inside, tatra tatra samadhiyah. So this is the understanding of Drishya Viveka, the first part of it, which is a summary of all the Vedanta. Another beautiful summary happens in verses 32 to 46 of the same Vakya Sudha. And there 3 terms are introduced. What is Pratibhasika Satya? What is Vyavaharika Satya? And what is Paramarthika Satya? The first two, although we use the word Satya, it is of a lower order of reality. When I am dreaming, I see a lot of dream objects. I have dream experiences. While I am in dream, those experiences are absolutely real. I see them as a lower order of reality only when I wake up from Pratibhasika to Vyavahara. So at that time, I will say the dream experiences are of a lower order of reality. So too, realized masters say that there is a higher order when you identify with the Paramarthika, when you identify with the Atma Tattva, then this world and the worldly experiences now become a lower order of reality. And our whole vision now is to understand from our true nature. We are Paramarthika, if I can use the word Paramarthika in our true nature. But for transactional purposes, we use our body-mind. So be anchored into the Paramarthika, play the role of Vyavahara. And this is the message of Drik Drishya Viveka. I will quickly, I will just read this for you. So what is the essence of all Vedanta from Drik Drishya Viveka? Both the Pratibhasika and the Vyavaharika are mithya. The Paramarthika alone is Satyam. If a person claims that this Paramarthika as himself through the statement, I am Brahman, Aham Brahmasmi, he has successfully studied Drik Drishya Viveka. After a proper study of Drik Drishya Viveka, the teacher looks and says, if you have not understood this, what shall we do? Then, of course, we can go to another text. But the teachers are hopeful that we will be able to get this understanding through a proper study of Drik Drishya Viveka. I will touch on very briefly 4 chapters of Panchadashi, because you will see the brilliance of Vidyaranya in his unique ideas, unique examples he's able to bring about Vedantic truths. Panchadashi is an advanced Prakarana Grantha. Prakarana Grantha is one of the works by great masters which has systematically brought out all the Vedantic teaching. It has 15 chapters and almost 1,571 verses, on an average of about 100 verses per chapter. But there are some chapters which are almost 300 verses, and there are some chapters with only 8 verses. Each chapter is complete in itself. It is recommended for all sincere Vedanta students because Sri Vidyaranya Swami collects different forms of prakriyas and examples. Essentially, just like the Bhagavad Gita is divided into shatkams, the Panchadasi is divided into three panchakams, sets of 5. The first 5 is called Viveka Panchakam, which focuses on Brahman as Sat. The next 5 is on Chit, called Deepa Panchakam, and the last 5 is Ananda Panchakam. So this is a general idea of the various topics and the number of verses in each chapter. I will briefly touch on chapter 1. Chapter 1 is called Tattva Viveka Prakarana. Essentially, it is moving from what appears to be real to that which is real. Asato ma sadgamaya. It is Vedanta in a nutshell. The opening verse is respect to his Guru, Namah Shri Shankarananda, Guru Pada Ambujamane, Savilasa Mahamoha Graha Grasika Karmane. My teacher's only mission is to help us to get out of avidya, and that is why I make salutations to Shankaranandaji. And he says, I will make this teaching as easily understandable as possible. Sukha Bodhaya, that comes in the next verse. In just 3 verses, from verse 3 to verse 10, Vidyaranya Swami is able to analyze the essence of Vedanta without bringing any scriptural understandings, only through our own experience, through Anubhuti and through logic. What he says is, as you look around, you have so many experiences. There are so many objects, so many situations. Each of them give you an experience. But you will see objects are many, the experiencer is only one. Objects are many. There is a non-variable component in all our experiences. Now, in my mind, there are many thoughts, but the one that is witnessing all my thoughts is only one. So what I am conscious of is changing. That I am conscious. The consciousness in me is non-variable. This is true even in my dream state. I have many dream experiences, but the dreamer is one. So too in my dream sleep. If you look at your whole life, you will see all through my life, many things have changed, but one thing has not changed. The witness in me who's observing all these things has not changed. That which does not change at all periods of time, all my life. Vidyaranya uses the word Sat. Sat is defined as that which does not undergo any change. This Sat, which is also my true nature, is of the nature of Chit or consciousness. So my true nature is Sat Chit. The next question asked is, whom do I love most? And the answer is, I love many people, situations, and objects. They come and go, but there is one person whom I unconditionally love. And I unconditionally love that which is always a source of happiness. So my real self should be of the nature of Ananda. And he deduces my real nature is that of Sat Chit Ananda, which is the essence of Paramatma. And in verses 3 to 10, he brings in Jivatma, Paramatma, Aikyam itself. Although I am Jivatma, I am Paramatma, I don't experience that. And he gives a nice example when you train your child to sing a song or chant a mantra. And you are sitting in the front row and all the children are singing. You can see them, you can hear them, but then your child's voice is drowned by the sound of all the other voices. Although you know, I know, this is what is called avidya. Avidya is incomplete knowledge. I know, but I do not know my true nature that I am Brahman. It is covered. Maya has got the ability to cover. And because I do not have complete knowledge of myself, I tend to project a limited me. And this is, and because of this, we are caught in the whirlpool of life. And we go from Punarapi Jananam, Punarapi Maranam, until he says a Karuna Nidhi, a guru comes who is able to salvage you from this. Throughout this text, we have various prakriyas like Drikdrishya Viveka, Panchakosha Viveka, Shariratraya Viveka, Avastatraya Viveka, and through all of them, he is able to move from the object to the subject, to the real you. In the first chapter itself, there is a great discussion bringing about some fundamental doubts on Vedanta using logic. And through these methods, certain fundamentals of Vedanta are questioned, and he also answers them. And in the process of discussion, through Mananam, one's understanding of Vedanta now becomes unshakable. He concludes the first chapter by saying this chapter alone is enough to get moksha. And those students of Panchadashi should study this chapter again and again. This is the first chapter. I will quickly touch on 3 other chapters. The second chapter is called Panchabhuta Viveka Prakarana. There is a verse in Chandogya Upanishad which goes like this: Sadeva Saumya Idamagra Asit Ekam Eva Advitiya. If there is one topic in the whole of Vedanta which is extremely difficult to understand, what is this existence? I see this world around, which is the same as consciousness, but what is this existence? Is it a substance? Is it a property? When you say he walks, he writes, it is a verb. When you say he exists, is he doing something? So it is only in Chandogya Upanishad that what is existence is very clearly brought out. And Vidyaranya does an elaborate discussion on what is this existence from verse 2 to verse 46 to help us to get a clear understanding of what is this existence. And the same topic in the same chapter, Maya is also discussed. It is said in the whole of Vedanta, there are two things which are very difficult to understand. What is Maya, and this other is what is existence. And both of this are nicely brought out in the second chapter of Panchadashi. I will come to the third chapter of Panchadashi called Panchakosha Viveka Prakaranam. And this Panchakosha Viveka has been very nicely described in the Taittiriya Upanishad in Brahmananda Valli. Brahmananda Valli begins by a very impressive statement, Brahmavid apnoti param. And it is concluded this way. There is that Brahman, yo veda nihitam guhayam parame yoman. That Brahman is residing in the cave of one's heart, and it is concealed by these Panchakoshas. So this whole chapter, Panchakosha Viveka, is understanding what is this Annamaya Kosha, and then you negate Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha, Anandamaya Kosha. It is like a serial dissection, like peeling of the onion. And when you open all the layers, you come to the ultimate opening and you find that there is nothing. It is only blank. And then Vidyaranya says, if it is blank, and if you have to declare blankness, there must be some conscious principle that is saying there is blankness. Can you focus on who is that who is aware of that blankness? And Vidyaranya again brings you in the third chapter from the object to the subject. I will jump to conclude from the seventh chapter, which is one of the most impressive chapters personally for me from Panchadashi, called the Tripti Deepa Prakaranam. And it is one of the most elaborate of all verses. 298, almost 300 verses are describing only one verse from Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, which goes like this. Atmanam ched vijaniyat ayam asmiti purushaha kimmichan kasya kamaya shariram anusandayate, which means when the Jivatma, when the individual understands his true nature as none other than Paramatma. And how does he understand? Aikya Rupena Aparoksha. You understand that I am none other than Paramatma. Once you understand your true nature, Kim Ichan, what desire is left? What to be fulfilled? What struggle is there to be done within this body? Now, once the desirer has disappeared, desire is gone, there is nothing to do. Essentially, you're left with nothing to do and nowhere to go. And this is the vision of a Jivan Mukta. Vidyaranya is a Jivan Mukta. And he has brought this out, he has worked out to give us 298 verses to say that once a person has a true understanding of himself, there is no struggle that you have to do with the body. So what is the meaning of this? All these highly accomplished people are continually working. And this is what is brought out in the second chapter of the Bhagavad Gita called Skill in Action. Yogaha karmasu kausalam. That means the real skill in action is you are continually doing. You are doing a lot of action, but then you understand that you are not doing anything. This is what is called inaction in action. I'm reminded of a story of Bhagwan Ramana. In Ramana's presence, everybody is silent. Everybody is still. They are transfixed at the presence of Ramana himself. It so happened that a family came in which there was a little girl who was hyperactive, running around, doing all sorts of things. And Ramana kept watching her. And then he asked her, "What are you doing?" She replied, "Chumarakre, I'm not doing anything." And he immediately reacts. This is how a jnani does. A jnani may be very busy, may be very active, but he knows because he is anchored into the Paramarthika, he is not doing anything at all. So in this chapter itself, there is the story of the 10th man. It is a very popular Vedantic story. And in this Vedantic story, it goes like this, that a certain guru has 10 students. And because there was something happening across the river, they took permission to go across the river to attend a function. On the way back, there was a storm and the river was flooded, and the only way they could get back was they had to swim. They were all confident swimmers, but they were very anxious to get across safely. So the leader instructs everyone, and he goes ahead and he is waiting for each one to come, and he serially counts for each person. And as in his anxiety, he's able to count 9 and he forgets to count himself. And he says, Dashamaha Nasti. He's extremely depressed. He says the 10th man is not there. He reports to his guru, and the guru comes and smiles and says, Dashamaha Asti. The 10th man is there. Then he says, where is the 10th man? He makes him count again, and he helps him to discover that the 10th man that he was looking for is none other than himself. Vidyaranya uses the same example to say, initially, we have various levels of spiritual understanding. Initially, I have complete ignorance. I do not know what is Brahman. Then comes a stage where I know that I do not know. That means the 10th man is missing. And when I do not know, there is a lot of anxiety and grief. That happens in the 2nd chapter, 11th verse, Asocyanam anvasochasya. So Krishna says, there is no need to grieve. You are grieving because you do not know your true nature. Those who know your true nature do not grieve. Then the teacher introduces Dashamaha Asti. So once the student knows that there is, the 10th man is there, he is relaxed. And then the teacher helps you to get Aparoksha Jnanam, to realize the 10th man is none other than himself. Once Aparoksha Jnanam comes, sorrow is gone, Shoka Nivritti, and Tripti or Ananda Prapti. These are the various levels of understanding, and that is how Vidyaranya helps us to understand through various Prakriti. I would like to conclude. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Thank you, Dr. Hegdeji. On behalf of Hawaii Forum, I heartily thank you. It was always very nice to get inspired by the great men's and Jnani stories. And Vidyaranya is like a part of our Vedantic lore. It was very nice, and you gave a brief review of 2 texts, both the important texts, Drigdashya Vivek and Panchadashi. So nice of you. Thank you very much, and we welcome you again and again on this.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Upaji.
And now the platform is open for question-answer session. Anyone would like to ask question can raise your hand, and we'll ask Hegdeji to answer your questions.
No questions.
It's just I have a question.
Yes.
It's just a clarification, just to make sure what I heard was right, regarding the Vyavaharika Satya, Paramarthika Satya, and Pratibhasika Satya. Is the Satya is same as Satta? Satta is reality, right?
Yeah. There is a little difference. There is a difference. See, now there are 2 differences. Like, although we use the word Satya, Satya is only one, that is the Paramarthika Satya. All the others are relative Satyas, which is from an experiential angle real, but from an absolute angle. So Satya cannot be more than one. Satya is only Paramarthika. So when a person becomes awake, when the mind comes into action, a person becomes a limited knower called a pramata. Now I'm able to see you. So that experience is a limited experience. Although as consciousness, we are Parabrahma, Paramatma. The moment the mind comes in, we become limited. But this limited is also a certain reality. For transactional purposes, we use the word Satya, but is actually a seeming reality. It is not really real.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Namaskara, Dr. Hegde. I have a question. Can you please elaborate a little more on Vidyaranya Swami? He was a Shringeri Acharya. How did he become like a prime minister or chief minister of?
There are varied stories. The story is because his younger brother was the senior pontiff, and although he was appointed a junior pontiff, during that time he traveled all over the country. He traveled to Varanasi, he traveled to Badri, and he came back to Hampi. He has spent a lot of time in Hampi. In fact, there are temples and shrines and ashrams, matas in Hampi, where even though he was part of Shringeri, he has spent a lot of time in Hampi and those places. It is said that around that time, he met these two brothers who had been displaced, who were prisoners in Delhi, who managed to escape. And then a lot of atrocities were happening. So if you see the regular history, if you go to YouTube, you'll see a lot of these videos, how he was able to empower them to come back and reestablish the kingdom. And he served as an advisor for them for various periods of time. And then I think when his younger brother was unwell or something, he had to come back to Shringeri. So he was not in Shringeri for quite some time. But then between the two brothers, they were in charge of Shringeri for over 50 years. The younger brother was in charge for a much longer time. Vidyaranya was chief only for about 6 years, from 1380 to 1386.
I have heard another story saying that the Mughal invasion stopped after Vidyaranya. Is there a truth to it?
That's true. For about 300 years, they were able to stop the onslaught of, Muhammad bin Tughlaq and that, and all their sultans. So the South India was protected for about 300 years from invasion, and that was one of his great contributions. So not only for Veda Purva, many of the religious practices became more commonplace because of Swami Vidyaranya, like Shri Vidya and various Lalita Sahasranamas, various other forms of pujas. People owe a lot to Vidyaranya Swami.
Okay.
Dr. Hegde, this is Jalaj Gupta. Firstly, compliments to you and the entire team of Param Vedanta, for doing what you're doing. So, sincere compliments to all of you. My question is that, is it possible to comprehend and understand Brahman by intellect? Since intellect itself is a part of my understanding of the fabric of Maya. So is it really possible? Thank you.
I think Swamiji should answer that question. See, although Brahman is beyond intellect, the only way for us is to use our intellect at least from Neti angle. At least we know Brahman is not this, not this, not this. Mano buddhi hankara chittani naham. So one method is through the method of negation. Not this, not this, not this. Maybe Swamiji could add on that.
I was also going to say the same. As we go to higher Vedanta, it is said that if you eliminate false identification, you then remain the pure self. Brahman cannot be known like we know other things. You are Brahman, but presently false ideas are doing all the noise. So if we see the falsity of the false notions, that is it. Neti neti happens. For when we know something to be false, we no more hold on to it. And when it goes away, the example given in Atma Bodha is Megha Paye Amshumaniva. When the clouds go away, the sun is visible without our having to hold another light to see the sun. Clouds have to go away, the sun becomes visible on his own. Therefore, false notions have to go away. And the good news is, false notions can be seen as false and then dropped through Vedantic study.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
And Jyoti Verma would like to ask a question. She has raised her hand. Yes,
Yes.
Jyoti.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Hedge, for the presentation. Hari Om. My question is going back to the Panchadashi text. It's not actually a question. I'm just needing your advice or help. You touched upon a guru coming to the life when we are really struggling in the world of samsara, and then we are sort of, at the grip of a guru. Can you tell me where I can find that verse, or if not now, you may even email. But it was a beautiful analogy to it, right? Like an insect fallen into a pit of oil or something. Wasn't that
it is in the first chapter of Panchadashi. It may be verse 13 or 14 or 15. I had brought it there. The first verse is some Nadyam Kitam, and the next verse was Karunanidhi. I think it's 13th or 14th.